Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second exchange series conversation. Here at NSVRC, we're really excited to be joined by some special guests working on a new and transformative project called the Parents of Parent Project. So we're going to get started and dive right in and learn a little bit more about this project and have a really great conversation that we hope you all enjoy this afternoon. So, Kristen, would you love to kind of kick it off for us and kind of give us that fantastic overview of what this project is for all of you?
Sure, Taylor, thank you. So I'm Kristen Ella Lobish. I'm the Marketing and Community Outreach Coordinator for the New England Adolescent Research Institute, or NERI Press and Training Center. And I'm also the project coordinator for the Parent to Parent program. So welcome. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Parent to Parent project is today. Parent to Parent project is a new initiative of NERI, as I said, Press and Training Center, and we are hoping to produce resources and some educational materials that will help parents and caregivers talk to their children and teens about healthy sexual exploration, as well as inappropriate and harmful sexual behaviors. So we're going to have a focus on prevention. I'm not going to talk about that yet because Elise is going to get that after me. But we hope to use our opportunities with Parent to Parent to promote healthy sexuality by encouraging parents to reach out to us for resources and for referrals on how to have proactive conversations with their kids and teenagers around healthy and unhealthy sexual behaviors before any incident has occurred, hopefully. And we also know that parents and caregivers of youth who do have a history with sexual behavior problems, or SBPs, can feel exhausted, isolated, unsure of how they can get their child or their teenager the help that they need, or how to connect with other families who have similar experiences. So a lot of the time we know that these families feel a sense of shame. Frequently they suffer because of the nature of what has happened with their child or teenager, and they might find themselves unable to turn to a lot of outlets they could otherwise count on for support. So even extended family, but certainly counselors, teachers at school, they may not know doctors or providers who have a specialty in helping work with that, nonprofit organizations, and whoever else is involved with taking care of children and youth. So we are hoping, NERI Press and Training Center is hoping to work on shattering that sense of isolation with Parent to Parent by coming up with, creating, and providing helpful and easily accessible materials for parents and caregivers. So some of the things that we might be looking to produce include online tools like a blog or a private Facebook group where parents can come together and they can share their stories and share resources, links to alternative resources, fact sheets, booklets, printed materials like that, or even audio materials like hopefully webinars, podcasts, interviews, that too. So a little bit more about how we are hoping to achieve this before I turn it over to Elisa. We have been surveying both parents and caregivers through a voluntary online questionnaire for the past several months, and consulting with a lot of experts in the field, including NCSVY, the Massachusetts Adolescent Sex Offender Coalition, or MASOC, and the Massachusetts Association for the Treatment of Sexual Abusers, or MATSA. And all these organizations share in their goals, I think, a desire to make society safer by preventing sexual abuse through things like early intervention, promoting better choices, both by youth and by the people who care about them, and encouraging healthy responses once things have happened. So we're happy to work with all of those people, and also some of our NERI Press authors, some nonprofit organizations working to promote healthy sexuality like Stop It Now and Jenny Coleman. So the feedback we receive from all of these different places, partners, parents, and caregivers, we're hoping will help us as a team develop the most current, the most useful, the most needed resources to be able to support these parents and families through all stages of healthy sexuality, prevention, reaction, all these different areas. So that's a little bit about what we're trying to do. I'm going to turn it over to Elisa because she's going to talk about prevention as a focus and a goal of what we're trying to do with parent to parent. Elisa?
Thank you, Kristen. That was a great overview. Really appreciate your helming of this project. So as Kristen said, we do have a really overarching goal for this project, which is prevention. And I think that where we need to start is to talk about a fairly little known fact. The viewers of this may know this, but not everybody does. 30 to 50% of child sexual abuse is actually perpetrated by kids and adolescents. And so this is a population that David will talk a little bit more about the research and how responsive kids and teenagers are to specialized treatment. But I just wanted to make the point that it's an incredibly important population to be working with to prevent a large proportion of child sexual abuse in our society. This is based on the concept that comes from the field of public health and that the field of criminal justice has picked up as well, called perpetration prevention. And I imagine most viewers of this know about perpetration prevention. We've been talking about it for almost 2 decades at this point. And the concept is that we are doing intervention before problematic sexual behaviors start, or if they are already apparent. There is some level of intervention to keep a child or adolescent who may be showing signs of problematic sexual behavior from actually perpetrating sexual harm. And the other level of public health prevention that we do is kids who have perpetrated sexual harm, working with them to develop strategies and working with their families, their parents, their caretakers, the adults in their lives, to keep them, to create strategies to keep them from perpetrating sexual harm again. So we're using a public health prevention model that really allows us to get at the problem before it kind of manifests itself, or if necessary, after it has, but to keep it from happening again. So as Kristen said, parents who have questions about their child's sexual behavior, whether it's healthy or not, or who wish to address concerns about their child who may be showing risk of perpetrating sexual abuse, or even those who may have parents of kids who have perpetrated sexual harm, they experience, as Kristen was saying, a lot of roadblocks to getting the help that they need, the resources that they need to be able to work with their kids in healthy ways. So this project, we think, is the first of its kind that is really going to create targeted resources for parents and other caretakers of kids with sexual behavior problems, but also that will just answer those questions that parents has, as Kristen said, about, what is healthy sexual behavior? Is this a problematic behavior? Do we need to intervene? Do we need to get specialized care for our child? So those are the kinds of resources that we are creating with parent to parent. And I believe Becky is next. Taylor, do you need to introduce her? Or Becky, I can hand it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Elisa. I'm Becky Palmer. I'm in private practice in the Chicago area, and I've been a family therapist for a very, very long time. One of the aspects that I think is often missed in the treatment of adolescents with sexual behavior problems is treating the family system. Often the family system becomes the last providers. They continue to the youth and try to figure out, well, why did he do this? And then suddenly everybody gets really nervous and goes, oh my God, this kid's going to go home. What are we going to do with him? And I think it's really important for us to get really focused on how parents feel about this. And that we often don't talk about. I want to just ask you to think for a moment what it would be like for you if you were in the car with both of your children and you had a horrible accident and you got out of the car and you looked at both of your children and realized that they were both horribly injured. Who would you help first? How do you make that decision? And that's often how parents feel when their child has committed a sexual offense. Primarily, and David will talk about this in terms of the research, but primarily because the person that their child has offended against is either a sibling, a cousin, a neighbor, someone known to them, the vast majority of the time. And so that creates all sorts of problems. Who do we help? And it's diagnostic as a family therapist to pay attention to how do parents respond to it. Sometimes families respond by making the victim leave the home. Sometimes families respond by sending away the youth that has committed the sexual offense. And rightfully so, until everything's assessed, it's probably not safe for everyone to be in the same household or having contact until the assessment's been made. Often there are many treatment goals that I think can be more adequately addressed in the family treatment system. So some of the common treatment goals for youth are taking responsibility for their behaviors, identifying what some of the contributing factors are, what's helped to contribute or help maintain this youth's abusive behavior, helping the youth to explore and utilize strategies, as well as promote healthy family functioning. Now, that's an awful big task to do in individual treatment or even in group treatment. The people that need to be working with this youth have not always been included. And we'd really like to see in this project that families, one, that were sensitive to their needs, two, that they recognize that there are resources for them. And one of the things that comes to my mind when I think about families being in the treatment process is, what are some of the constraints for being in treatment? Well, first of all, finances. A lot of families can't afford all of the treatment that is required of them. Two, often by the time they get to treatment, the family has been interviewed and re-interviewed and shamed and guilted by the system, whether it's Child Protective Services, it's the police, or extended family. And so they're not really particularly excited to talk to others about what's going on in their family. Some of the other constraints are time. How am I going to get everybody to a family treatment session? Thirdly, emotions. They feel guilty. They feel shame. They're going to talk about it. And then the other constraint that comes in for that is resistance to change. None of us really like to change. We think we do, but when we recognize what it's going to take to change, sometimes that feels pretty insurmountable, particularly when we don't have support. And then resistance to influence. Often families really are resistant to being influenced by someone. One, because that stimulates their guilt or their shame for what has happened, like, I missed it, this is proof that I'm really not a very good parent. And so consequently, I think the family therapy that can happen can be as supportive as it can be corrective. I think it's also really important for us as the family treatment people to understand that families go through a grief process when there's been a disclosure of sexual abuse. Because we think of our family as being a certain way and functioning a certain way. And once there's a disclosure of sexual abuse, we often have to face a reality that we're not how we used to be. I think that what's most important is that families know that change is possible, and that our goal is to instill that hope and help them understand that there are resources available to them. And I think I'm going to send it over to David now so he can talk about what some of the research tells us about change.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you, Becky. And part of the reason I like following research as much as I do, I'm actually not a research geek by nature. I came upon this honestly because I discovered that everything I thought I knew when I started doing this work has turned out not to be true. Some of us were talking just before this broadcast started about how much things have changed in the course of just a few seemingly short decades. And indeed, that's particularly true in working with kids who've sexually abused. When I came online back in the mid-1980s, it was assumed that all of these kids were going to go on to do it again. That turned out not to be true. And in fact, not only did it turn out not to be true, it turned out to be very untrue. And so untrue that we've had to really think very differently about what we do and why. So there was this assumption back in the old days. And the most recent research that we've seen, particularly by a fellow named Michael Caldwell, has shown that over the past 15, 17, maybe 20 years or so, the actual reoffense rates of adolescents who do abuse has dropped down significantly. This is a problem that has actually gotten better. And when you see Michael Caldwell speak about it, the tone that he adopts is something to the effect of, great work, everybody. This is a result not just of psychologists or social workers or law enforcement or criminologists. This is a result of people coming together across society and talking about the problems that they face with their lives. And so for me, one of the key messages of the research up to this point has been, we should talk about it. Parents need to get together. They have all too often been the sort of unknown part of the equation, and arguably have held not only the most effective role in treatment, but also the most honorable as well. And that's really a big part of why I got involved in this project. What we've also discovered since many of us first started doing this work is that anything that even looks like a punishment-oriented response simply doesn't work. We can't just punish this issue away. We've also learned that not all of these kids are alike. In fact, researchers have come along trying to say this is the profile of an adolescent who sexually abuses, and every one of them has come to grief. They've met with failure. In fact, what we learn is that there's as many different kids who have sexually abused as there are different kinds of kids. So if you've met one kid who has abused, who has perpetrated sexual harm, you've met one kid who's perpetrated sexual harm. They come in all shapes and sizes and from all backgrounds within society. What we've also found is that treatment actually works quite well with kids who've abused. In one study by a friend of mine named Lorraine Reitzel, she found that for every 38 kids who completed treatment and reoffended, there were actually 100 kids who didn't receive treatment who went on to reoffend. Now, that's kind of complicated to describe statistically. It's called an effect size of 0.38. But what it means is that completing a treatment program reduces somebody's risk really quite significantly. Something else we found out just within the past few years is then for every 5 years that a young person or an adult who's abused can stay offense-free in the community, their risk actually reduces very often by as much as 50%. So this is not a problem of just a few bad apples who are bound and determined and destined to do it again. This is a problem that takes place across society, across ages, and that the best thing that we can do is remain cautiously optimistic, to provide comprehensive assessments, to provide treatment programs that are in accordance with the literature, and above all, to involve families to the very greatest extent possible in all of our treatment efforts. That's going to be where a lot of our best prevention efforts are going to exist. So I'm really proud to be a part of this field, and very happy to be part of this project as well. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing. I think it's really beautiful that this project is really tying together all that we've learned in the past decades, and really tying in that research with this parent-to-parent project that you all are working on and really making it about the whole family and the hope and the healing that comes with that. And really, also understanding that every family, every child is unique, and that we come from that lens. So I think that's really exciting work that you all are doing. If there's anything as we close out that you would like to share around how folks can get involved with the project, where they can go to learn more about the project, and where all of these wonderful resources will be housed, we'll be sure to also include that in the comment box. But yeah, if there's any closing comments you'd like to share around that, or your hopes and dreams for the project as it rolls out and continues for the years to come.
I can address those first couple of things.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to get involved with the Parent to Parent Project, or if you'd like to learn more about what we're trying to do, you can visit www.nearipress.org. So that's NEARIPRESS.org. And right on the front page of our website, there's a little blurb about Parent to Parent. It has a link to the survey questionnaire there if you are a parent or caregiver who'd like to go fill it out. If you're a clinician or provider who wants to refer parents to us, that's great. We're actually offering a choice of one of Miri's books as a thank you. So if you want to go to our website, you can find out more. And there's also contact information for me and for Elisa if you would like to email us or call us. We'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have about how to get involved or how to learn more.
And I guess the last thing that I would want to say is that we do hope to grow this project so that we can reach out beyond, so-called parents. It's called Parent to Parent, but we really want to emphasize that it's anybody who's involved in the life of a child or an adolescent who has sexual behavior problems, or anyone who has questions about healthy sexual behavior and sexual development. So ultimately, we really do hope that we will be able to do really broad outreach to a kind of universal audience of people who come in contact with kids, work with kids, from teachers and school staff to medical professionals who serve children, to community leaders who work with children in different settings, because we want to have these resources available to everyone so people start to discuss and talk about what healthy sexual behavior is and isn't, when there are signs of risk, when intervention is necessary, what the resources are to intervene. We really hope to have that information spread broadly to a very broad audience of people who come in contact with kids. So that's what we hope for the future for the Parent to Parent Project.
Thank you. And as we close, to our viewers and listeners, if you have any questions, please feel free to add those in the comment section below, and we'll be sure to monitor those and get back to you as soon as possible. We hope you enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.